Welcome to Streets and Eats. This is episode 53, and today on the podcast, we are taking you to Louisiana, Cajun, Louisiana. To be exact, we're going to show you how to get your Cajun on in southern Louisiana. Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure.
We've been doing so much. One of the things I found really fun is going to Astor's school and learning a little bit about the cultural differences between schools in the States. And, well, I wouldn't even call this a Vietnamese school. It's more of an international school.
You hit the nail on the head there. There are a lot of Vietnamese kids there, but it is an international school. And so it kind of follows the traditions of and the cultural requirements of being in Vietnam. At the same time, it's an American school. So they're trying to get that across too. One of the most interesting things I kind of saw was as you go into the early childhood center where Astor's class is, there were shoes outside, even though it's basically the same flooring from one area to the next. So I didn't really think about it. And I was walking around with my shoes on. No one said anything, but eventually I realized, wait a minute, nobody's got their shoes on in here. So I went quietly back out to the door and took my shoes off.
That's what I was going to say too. It's so funny because the shoe thing really lets you know that you're in Southeast Asia, doesn't it? I mean, yes. Or Asia in general, actually. Most of the places we've lived around the world, That's take your custom. Shoes off. It's the custom to take your shoes off, although not to the same extent as Asia. In Asia, you wear your shoes until you hit a set of steps to the temple or you cross a threshold, or even when we were looking at apartments, like you took your shoes off outside the apartment. But of course you're not going to store your shoes outside the apartment.
No,
people who live there are going to store them directly inside the apartment. But if
visitors leave them outside.
I mean, it's just
going even to the pool, you have to take your shoes off at the first step before you go up to the pool area, and they will chase you down.
And they will chase you down.
I have made that mistake once or twice. You take off your shoes before you go onto the playground where the playground equipment is.
But walking between the pool and the playground is regular ground.
Yeah, so you don't have to wear shoes there, but it is a shoe area.
It's just funny. It's just funny to me. So slip-on shoes are a must when you live in Asia, especially Southeast Asia.
Yeah. That was probably the biggest one that I noticed. There's probably more. We didn't spend a whole lot of time at the school.
Well, they did a Halloween.
On that trip. They did a Halloween.
And the whole Halloween thing was beyond anything I would have ever seen in the States.
Yeah, that's true. Halloween is very low key in a public school in the States for various reasons, which we could get into in a different podcast. But it's not something that's really celebrated in public school anymore. Used to be. And maybe the way that it used to be is what's been carried on here, but it definitely is a day of
a full
costumes
day.
And
candy and just partying.
Yeah. And Halloween costumes, like full on scary costumes.
Or not scary, but
whatever
scary was okay.
Basically it was whatever costume they wanted to wear, they could pretty much wear it.
It was pretty, as far as I could tell. It's been pretty interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
But what I do like is that they have swimming lessons once a week. The only other place
for preschool, which is really cool.
Yeah. The only other place I've seen mandatory swim lessons is when I was teaching in the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot because it can be dangerous if you don't know how to swim or if you're afraid of the water or whatever. Plus we have a pool, so it's good for Astor to know how to.
And he loves to be in the water now too.
He does.
A lot of fun just exploring and being in a new place again.
And it's just, it's one of those things when you're traveling, you just always find things that are different. And that doesn't mean they're good different or they're bad different.
They're just
different. And it's just so fun to uncover those. I love that. It's what makes my soul tick.
And you're learning how other people around the world deal with the world around them in different ways than what you might be used to, which is always good.
So we've been having a good time.
Yeah. So, okay. So speaking of different areas.
I know. That's exactly what I was going to say
as
a segue.
We went on a trip to Louisiana, again, for a conference, which is a great way to go to different places. And
especially if you extend it a little bit on either end of the conference and do a little bit of your own travel.
Exactly. And because we are travel bloggers, travel writers, travel conferences is what we go to. And not only are you going to a new place, but you're going to a new place that's presenting what they have to offer for travelers. So you really get a good taste of it. And we get to share that with our listeners, which I love.
So the conference we went to is TBEX. We go to those as often as we can because they just have a good, they just fit well with us.
Yeah.
We enjoy it.
And I'll put a plug in for TBEX. If you are a burgeoning travel blogger, vlogger, TikToker, YouTuber, whatever, writer, consider TBEX for your next travel conference. It's a great way to meet like-minded people and also rub elbows with other areas of the travel industry and just make contacts and have a good time and see a new place.
We love it. And we go at least once a year, if not more.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on this trip, we were being hosted by Lafayette.
They say Lafayette.
They say Lafayette. That's right. He's right. And that's always another thing that cracks me up. We lived in Alaska for a while, right? And we lived in Anchorage, which is pronounced Anchorage, but it's not far from Valdez, which is spelled like Valdez, but it's pronounced Valdez. And so I think it's interesting that people can tell that you're not from there by how you pronounce their towns and stuff. Sure. And it doesn't matter if they're phonetically correct or not. It just doesn't. It's what it is.
Yeah.
So
you have to respect that.
You do.
Not that we could ever really fit in as Southern Louisiana people with our accents. I will say I expected their accents to be a lot heavier than what we encountered. That's just my own preconception, I guess. But I didn't really find them to be that heavy.
But they were distinct.
Definitely.
They definitely were. And I can't give you any specific examples because I don't think it's appropriate anyway. But
yeah, right.
Like we were saying, instead of Lafayette, which I would say it's Lafayette.
Lafayette.
And okay, so if you go to Louisiana, of course you're going to go to New Orleans. We've been to New Orleans. Jim went again on this trip, and he had a really good time. And he'll talk about that. But New Orleans isn't the end all. Right. You know, if you talk to people from Louisiana, there are other places that you should definitely go. And Lafayette is one of them.
Definitely one of them. And if you talk to someone from Lafayette, they'll tell you that when you go to New Orleans and you get Cajun food, that it's not Cajun as far as they're concerned, because for one thing, to be Cajun means that you're a descendant from the French Canadians that moved down into southern Louisiana in the bayou areas when the British kicked them out of Acadia in Canada. And so you have to kind of be in that area really to really experience the Cajun lifestyle, hospitality, food.
Which was fantastic.
It takes over every aspect of culture there, which is cool. One
of the first things we did, and this is before the conference started, we were on our own doing a little bit of touring around. We were with my mother-in-law, Jenny, and we stopped at the visitor center because why wouldn't you? We had a whole list of things that we were going to do, and we were looking for things that didn't do the same things. We were looking for other things to do.
Some variety.
We hadn't
thought of already or found in searches on the web.
And usually, you go to a visitor center, and depending on how busy it is and the personality of the visitor center, you can get a lot of really good information. So we go in there and we're like, so what should we do? And she's like, go on a
swamp tour.
Well, I've written a whole article on swamp tours because let me tell you, we went on a lot of swamp tours. I went on, I think 4 or 5 swamp tours while we were there. But if you talk to those ladies, you could go on a swamp tour every day. And I think that they're correct because
Each swamp tour we did was different.
Every single swamp tour was completely different from the other.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there's lots of things about where to eat and, what to do. But even the little visitor center itself was so Cajun. It had a little walkway out to a water, what do you call that? Like a pond.
I think it's meant to be like a bayou, but of course it's not a waterway connected to any other waterways because it's more like maybe a swamp area.
But it had turtles and it had egrets and it was, I think even locals used to go there and just walk around because
it's a beautiful garden.
It's a cute little place to just sort of go get your swamp on.
Right in the middle of the highway.
Right in the middle of the highway.
As you're coming into town.
Yeah. So that was a good stop. The visitor center, and they were very welcoming, of course, which they always are that. And they always have best bathrooms if you're traveling.
Yeah, good, clean bathrooms.
Good, clean bathrooms. And sometimes free coffee and donuts and stuff like that. Don't pass by a visitor center when you're traveling in the States. Like I said, the very first thing we did was we went on a private swamp tour. And we went out to Lake Martin. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, I did a number of swamp tours on Lake Martin. And they were, like I said, they were all different. This one was early in the morning. It was just 4 of us, Jenny, Jim,
got out there just before,
myself and the driver.
Just before sunrise or right at sunrise.
And what was nice, a little after sunrise, actually.
Right, on that swamp tour, it was a little bit after sunrise.
And what was nice about it is we saw tons of alligators. Mm-hmm. And we saw things like that big spider.
Yeah, I don't remember which kind of spider it was.
I don't remember what kind. It was big, and I wasn't going to touch it. And I don't think I even took a picture of it because it was a little too close for comfort. But it was a spider, and it was interesting. And we saw tons of birds. The birds were really cool, and it was just so peaceful.
Yeah, and just that was a motorboat. The boat driver did a really good job of kind of getting us to an area and then dialing back on the acceleration so that we could just kind of drift through without the engine going too loudly. So that was pretty cool. But we went through the bald cypress trees that are just growing right up out of the water. And it's like a magical world.
It really is.
It's incredible, especially when you get the morning light coming in, or probably in the evening too, I imagine. But
we weren't there in the evening.
We were there in the morning.
But we were there during fall. And so there was some fall colors, which I found a little bit unexpected. I, for some reason, just thought in my head that you go to a swamp and it's always green, but this swamp wasn't always green. There was a lot of green still, but there was also browns and oranges, and it was really pretty.
Yeah, really pretty. So that swamp tour on a motorboat was really cool. We did do another one together on kayak. Well, was it kayak or canoe?
It was a canoe. They called it a kayak, but it was a canoe. They called it a kayak
tour, but it was really a canoe tour where we were out, you and I, in our own canoe.
Yes.
Just zipping along, following the guide, going off on our own, away from the guide, but coming back whenever we'd go to a different area. And that one we did get out there before sunrise, and it was just incredible.
It was. That was my favorite one, actually. Yeah. And it was my favorite because A, we were kind of in charge of ourselves, which is always nice. But B, I could take whenever you are in a quiet boat near wildlife, you can always get such good photos.
You'll see more, you'll experience more, and of course the photography is even better. And yeah, it's not a motorboat zipping along. So we would just stop and sit in the still water, and basically you're on a nice calm platform. You don't have to worry about that boat shake that you usually get.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. That was pretty.
And sunrise is when all the birds are getting active and coming out. So we really got a great show of all the different birds in the area, the egrets and the herons. And
then afterwards, on the first tour, we went for breakfast. And that was one of my favorite breakfast places because it was in this little town. I'll have to write it in the show notes because I'll get it wrong if I just do it from memory. But it doesn't really matter. It was just this little cafe in the middle of town. It was suggested that we go there. We asked the guide. Yeah. And he said that was his favorite place. And we went in there and it was just locals. Now, here's the thing. That I didn't grow up in the South. Well, I didn't grow up anywhere. I grew up all over the world.
You still haven't grown up.
I still haven't grown up. But I imagine this is more of a Southern thing. We were in there and the little kids, like 2, 3, 1, none of them had shoes on.
Yeah.
But then a family came in and they had 2 little girls, and the girls were probably early in elementary. I'm going to say first, second, third grade, somewhere around there. The 2 of them. And they had shoes on. So I'm noticing this and I'm thinking to myself, when is it appropriate to start wearing shoes? Well, apparently that is one of the ongoing discussions, because an older lady came in, a local old lady, and as she's walking by the table with the 2 little girls, she stops, bends over, and looks to see if they have shoes on. And then she compliments them and says, "I'm so glad to see you guys are wearing shoes. You're such grown-ups." And I'm like, oh, wow.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. And I just thought that's not something you get in the middle of New Orleans. Because in New Orleans, in the middle of New Orleans, downtown, you're going to get basically tourists. And the people that work there. But you're not going to get that local flavor, so to speak.
Small town feel.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
Good. And the biscuits and gravy were delicious too.
They were, but I think your favorite thing was the banana pudding dessert for breakfast.
Of course. Grandma's pudding or whatever they called it.
I don't remember what they called it either, but I know that banana pudding's a thing. And banana pudding for breakfast was also, it was just fine. It's like, oh yeah, of course you're going to have breakfast dessert.
How could you leave without it? And also on that one, our van driver that brought us out to the lake was filling us full of information the whole time about what to eat. So we got lots of good ideas from her.
Yeah. In fact, I think we're going to try and get her on a podcast because she was amazing with her food knowledge growing up in Cajun, Louisiana.
Well, we found that everywhere in Lafayette and the surrounding area, food is big.
Food is big. And it's not just big to the tourists. It's big for the people.
Yes, it's important. And Cajun food is very important, and it's unique. And they want to share it. So we never had a hard time getting good advice and good tips on where to eat and what to eat. Another place that I got to go to was the Tabasco plant, which, when I was looking at the tour and thinking about it, I thought, I really do like going to any type of factory tour. I really enjoy seeing how things are made, packaged, distributed, all that good stuff. So I thought, okay, that'll be a pretty fun tour. Then you get there and Tabasco factory is not really just a factory. It's a whole island that was bought by a family way back when. And eventually they came up with this scheme to make a sauce from Tabasco peppers. At first they were growing them there, but they can never get enough grown locally. So they have to import the peppers. But what I learned on the tour was all of the peppers that they use for Tabasco come from seeds that originated on that island. And all of the Tabasco that you get around the world, every bottle that you've seen anywhere in the States or anywhere was made and bottled on that island. All of it. So it's really incredible. And they have done such a good job of conserving their history and presenting it. It was a fascinating day.
If you're going to pick, what he's saying is, if you're going to pick one tour to take that really sort of accentuates the ingenuity, the hardworking history, and the taste of Southern Louisiana, Cajun Louisiana, you want to go on that Tabasco tour. Yeah, I'll put a link in there.
Yeah, they had a great food tasting where I had no idea there was so many different Tabasco sauces. I had no idea. I don't even know. There's like 14.
That's because we're kind of wimpy eaters and we don't eat a lot of spicy stuff. But
I knew there was like the regular red one and the green one, and there's like a spicy one.
Right. Me too.
It goes the whole range of chipotle, pineapple. I mean, you name it. They've
habanero.
They've got a hot sauce for it. So part of the tour is different Cajun dishes that you pair with a different Tabasco sauce. So we had crawfish etouffee, we had corn mac choux, we had boudin egg rolls, and each with a different recommended sauce. So that was pretty cool.
And they were all
amazing,
spicy
and delicious.
And were they too spicy?
For me, no. I really like spice. Some of the people that were on the tour with me, when they got the really super spicy one, they couldn't really handle it. I'm like, this is yummy. I like it. Yeah, it's spicy. It's supposed to be spicy. It's supposed to burn a little bit.
I'm a New Englander.
But not too spicy for me.
I don't know if I want too spicy at all.
I don't know if you could handle that one.
Yeah.
But in the shop, they have like habanero raspberry ice cream,
now that sounds kind of good.
Coke. They were really delicious, surprisingly delicious. I mean, we've had some interesting ice creams around the world.
Yeah, we have. But I can't say I've ever had Tabasco raspberry.
Nope. And I haven't really always liked all of them. But this one I really thought was a good flavor combination.
Yeah.
That made
I didn't
sense.
go on this tour. Only my mother-in-law, Jenny, went on it one day and then Jim went on it a different day. But if I come back down there, I'm going on that tour because both of them ranted and raved about how wonderful it was.
Yeah,
so
it was a good tour.
I think it would be good.
It rained a lot on us. So there's also on part of the island, they have a botanical garden, which was beautiful. We went through it, but it was raining pretty heavily. So we didn't really get to like get out and walk through it. But alligators, of course.
Oh, yeah. There's alligators
life.
everywhere. In fact, we went on the Louisiana State University. Is that what it is? In Lafayette?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I think it's LSU. Or is it LU?
No, I don't know.
Anyway, I'll look it up. But it's the only campus that has a pond with alligators in it.
Did you do that with the Cajun for a Day tour?
No, I did that with the Acadian when we went to the Acadian Festival because it was right downtown.
Oh, okay.
In Lafayette. You were with me.
I don't remember that.
They were talking about it, but it was just pretty cool. And the university looks like a really nice university too.
It really does.
So one of the things that I thought was funny, if you're a football fan, you're going to fit right into Louisiana because I've never been anywhere that was as football crazy as Louisiana. That's every single person I talked to.
At every level.
High
school, college, professional.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, every single person I talked to had used football analogies for their stories. Every single one. And here's the thing. I know football is brown.
No, it's not.
It's not brown?
Oh, brown. I thought you said round.
It's brown.
It is brown.
And you kick it. And you wear a lot of padding. And it's kind of fun to go to high school football games because you're a young teenager. But other than that, that's all I really know about football. And they're talking football analogies as they're telling me these really cool stories. I'm like, I'm not sure I get what you're saying here. I'm not a sports fan. And they just look at me like, well, what does that mean? Because there's no such thing as not a sports fan in Louisiana.
Right.
I just love that. I thought that was great. And this is part of the United States. I found it to be, I felt like traveling. I felt like I was traveling because it was that much different than what I was used to. And we've traveled all over the United States. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say it's a pocket of the U.S. that is
pretty unique.
It's well worth going to. What else did we do that was fun there? God, we did many
you mentioned
fun
the festival.
Yeah, we did. We went to the festival, and instead of cutting the ribbon to start the festival, they cut a string of boudin sausage, which, I mean, is just hilarious.
And then it was just a whole night of
Acadian music. Zydeco, yep.
And food.
Food and music.
Drinking,
and
of
food.
Course.
And some beer. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Some good food. We had a lot of good food there.
Good
so
Cajun
much
food.
I can't even remember it all.
You also did the Cajun for a Day. So the other thing that the ladies at the visitor center recommended was, of course, go to Tabasco, do a swamp tour, a different one every day, and then go to one of the old Cajun villages, outdoor museum type things.
And so I went to Vermilion.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it was the old name of Lafayette.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so that's why it's called Vermilion. And so it's one of those villages where they have people in old dress, like old historical costumes. And they're supposed to be, historically correct. And they tell you about the part that they're in. So like there is a lady there in linen dress that was weaving, and there was the guy that was taking us around normally is like the preacher, and he's in the church telling you about the church, And there's just different things. And it's really fun to go around and listen. There was a chief, and a Native American chief from one of the tribes there that talked to us. He was the first person that talked to us, and he had some interesting things to say. And it was completely different than going like on a plantation tour, which I did 3 or 4 plantation tours as well, which were a lot of fun and different than I expected as well. One thing I can say about traveling in Louisiana is that they're very aware of their turbulent history, of the fact that they were a slave state and using humans for labor. And almost every plantation I went to talked about that and talked about how horrible it was. And they gave us some pretty stark examples. And I thought that, finally it's not being glossed over, and we're getting a true taste of what it meant to work on a plantation as a slave, or be on the plantation as a white person who owned the plantation. It was completely different. And it's very interesting. So I think for people who are really looking for truth, that plantation tours have sort of, at least the ones in Louisiana, I can't speak for the rest of the South because I haven't been on any lately. But I really think that they're starting to embrace their total history. One of the people that we talked to was a slave descendant of the master of the house.
Oh, wow.
So there's multiple levels of human abuse there, as well as the fact that, she was the daughter of the master, but she was born to a slave. So she herself was a slave. I mean, not this person, but her great-grandmother.
Right. Her ancestor.
Her ancestor was. So it's just very interesting. And also what the plantations have done is they've all written books about this, and they're selling them in their shop. And because we were on the special tour, we were getting them for free. And it was just fascinating to read some of this history, some really dark history, and then some, pretty cool history as well. Like one of the plantations where they sold a lot of the land off at one point, they had 18 rows of huge elm trees. And so, now they only have 6 or 7 before the end of the property. But can you imagine? We looked from the balcony through that lane of trees, and just for that short amount, it was pretty impressive. Yeah. But can you imagine if it was 18 down there? It's pretty fantastic. And of course it borders the Mississippi River, and we talked about the Mississippi. One of my dream things to do, really, and we're going to do this sometime we're in the States, is to take a boat down the Mississippi. Since I read Tom Sawyer.
Do they do that? Are there like boat?
It's something we need to look at.
River cruises on the Mississippi?
There must be, right?
There has to be. Come on. If you can have a river cruise on the Rhine, you got to be able to have a river cruise on the Mississippi.
I think it's a totally different experience, but one that I'm willing to do. But anyway, so the plantations were interesting. I just found they maintained, the main quarters, of course, and there's lots of artifacts and things that go back hundreds of years. So that's interesting. It just felt like they were actually coming of age, the plantations, and the tours were much more
figured
worthwhile.
Out a way to present the history without ignoring things or pretending it didn't exist.
Being truthful.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So I could recommend a lot of plantations to go to and a lot of things to see and do in that area that I think are much more worthwhile now than maybe they were, 5 or 10 years ago.
So those were the big 3 that they recommended, was Tabasco, swamp tours, and plantations, or the open air museums like Vermilion.
As well as eating.
And then the food. And they said, did you eat this? Did you eat that? Well, okay. So Did you eat boudin? Did you eat crackling? Did you eat the one they never asked us about, but I was kind of shocked because it was something so foreign to me, was the corn mac choux, which is basically just a corn vegetable mix type thing, right? But I've never seen that before.
And I certainly didn't know what it meant when it was on the menu.
I had no idea what it was on the menu. But it's just a side of corn with some different vegetables.
Which I enjoyed, by the way. Good. One thing that everybody mentioned, and I tried it everywhere they offered it, was the bread pudding. Okay, so when I grew up, bread pudding was, and we didn't have it that much. My mother was not a bread pudding person, so it's not like we had it at home or anything. But basically, you had your old stale bread.
Yeah.
And
some egg and milk and some sugar and some cream.
And then you baked it, right?
Maybe some raisins.
Yeah, and raisins.
Soak it and bake it.
Anyway, my mother wasn't a fan, so we didn't have it that much.
My family had it pretty regularly, and it was always like the heels of the bread that no one wanted to eat. We'd just keep them until we had a full bag of heels, and then my mom would make it. I really did not like bread pudding.
No.
Well,
I've not ever had a bread pudding I didn't like, and all the ones I had in Louisiana were beyond amazing. But they did not look at all like what you're describing or at all what I expected. I expected them to have this very rustic, bits of bread look where you have the heels or you can see the crust here and the white here and that kind of thing. No, they must pulverize.
Maybe.
They must pulverize their bread because it looked very cakey instead. And then this one had caramel and this one had butterscotch and this one had cream, vanilla cream. And I mean, there was all different kinds. And like I said, I tried it every single place I went. And every single place I went, I could have had so much more. It was delicious, but I didn't.
I think we also had corn and crab bisque.
Oh,
corn bisque or crab bisque or corn and crab bisque.
Was that my most favorite thing? I think of so. The entire trip.
Bon Tom Grill.
Yes. My favorite dish is what you're describing. It was called crab and corn bisque. And let me tell you something. Anytime I can have a seafood bisque, it's gonna rank up there with me. And the corn, I was kind of iffy on because I had some crab and corn bisque basically in San Francisco, and it was good, but it didn't hold a candle.
Nope.
To this at the Bon Ton Grill, and oh my gosh, it just was the right spice. It just tingled your tongue. Mm-hmm. You had such a good feeling in the back of your mouth of that
little savory.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I could have some of that right now, actually.
The crab. It was really incredible. I loved it.
Incroyable.
But my
delicious.
favorite were the charbroiled oysters.
Yeah, you did love those.
I had those wherever I could.
Them. Yeah,
Don's had them had a really good one.
I think you had them like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. If it was available, I had them. That and, of course, fried green tomatoes.
You know what? I was disappointed. Where was the first place we had fried green tomatoes? I can't remember, but I was so disappointed. I did not care for them. Mm. And that was surprising to me because I really love fried green tomatoes. And I was in Alabama a few months ago, I think around, June. So a couple months before we went to Lafayette. And I had the best fried green tomatoes of my life. And now everything is stacked up to those fried green tomatoes. Mm. No, I was disappointed.
Well, these had crawfish etouffee on top of them.
Oh.
And they were amazing.
But could you still taste the tomato? See, that's the only problem I have with putting too much stuff on it.
Breaded just slightly and then fried really well. And only just a dollop of etouffee on top. It was delicious.
Well, let me tell you, we're going to do a podcast just on the food.
Okay.
Because we have so much to say about it. Plus, I want to get a couple of guest speakers on who really can talk about the traditions behind it. Because I found them fascinating. We were mesmerized.
Yeah. Everybody had their favorite for boudin. No, you can't eat it here. No, you have to eat it there. No, it's better here. I thought that was really funny.
And it's still a fight going on to this day.
Of course. Yeah.
And just the things that, no, I'm not even going to tease it anymore. We're going to do a whole podcast on it because it was so well worth it. And
getting around Lafayette, I thought was pretty easy to do. There's a city bus there. We took it downtown a couple of times from our hotel. I had to go do laundry once.
It wasn't the most convenient.
But what I discovered about it was if you had to do something on the route, it was great, but there wasn't a lot of interconnection between the routes.
And then we tried one night to pick it up and it didn't come.
It just never came. Because Google had the times wrong, which Google's I discovered fault? Later.
Whoever fault it was, we were sitting in the hot sun for way too long.
It's never fun. But we Ubered around quite a bit, and that worked out quite well. About what you'd expect cost-wise. You can fly into Lafayette. Jenny flew in.
Yeah.
We flew into New Orleans and got a rental car and did a one-way rental car and dropped it off there. There's a bus from New Orleans to Lafayette that leaves pretty regularly. But we were getting to the airport like just after it would have left. And so we would have had to wait for an hour.
Not only that, we wanted the car for the next couple of days.
And for two of us, renting a car for a day was only a little bit more than what the bus would have cost. And we had the bonus of having the car to kind of tool around and explore the countryside like we like to do. So that worked out really well.
Oh, you know what? One of the surprising things, and maybe it's just me, I did not know that sugarcane was such a huge product there.
Huge product there.
And one of the things we did, that's what reminded me of it, was driving around that day we had the rental car, is going to all these cool little towns all around Lafayette, and just the sugarcane field. And they were harvesting while we were there. Mm-hmm. So you saw these huge trucks that were full of cane. It was really cool.
Yeah, that was that was unexpected for me too. I also learned what a bayou is while we were there. A bayou is just a body of water that connects to rivers.
A moving body of water.
And it usually has a current.
We learned a lot. It's just a different part of the United States. It has a different feel to it.
Different flavor.
Well, a lot of I-10 goes over the swamp. So you're on this elevated causeway for a good portion of it. But it's easy to get around. The people were super friendly and helpful. The food was amazing. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you were a little bit tired of everything, you just go to a drive-in daiquiri shop and get a daiquiri and then go back to your hotel.
Take it back to your hotel. Don't drink and drive.
No, that's against the law.
Yeah, every imaginable flavor of daiquiri from a drive-in.
Not just every imaginable flavor.
Some unimaginable
ones.
You
could also, but all the alcohol choices that they had. To me, a daiquiri just means flavored rum.
Strawberry daiquiri, right?
But no, I mean, they had all kinds of choices in the daiquiri place we stopped at. Because we did stop. Because you have to. Because we've got a story about that. The first time we went to Louisiana and went to New Orleans, we were hungry.
Oh, yeah.
We were looking for a regular old fast food drive-in, which there are plenty, of course, but not where we were. And we saw this place called Daiquiris, and we're like, well, let's just go there. It's a drive-through. And so we pull up, and we're like, there's no menu. All there is talking about daiquiris. Like, that doesn't make sense. So we get to the window, and we're like, what food do you have on offer? She goes, we don't have food. We serve daiquiris. It's called daiquiris. The menu outside only has daiquiris on it.
She looked at us like we were
food.
Complete idiots.
And what a cultural thing for us. We're looking at each other like...
Why would you have a drive-through alcohol shop?
That's against the law to drink and drive.
Which the whole thing. Still there too, but you get it to go, or the people in the car can drink it, I guess.
No, you can't have it open. That's why they serve it with the paper still on the straw.
Okay.
That's how the police, if they stop you, know that you haven't had it yet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's an open container.
I did know that.
Yes, you did know that.
I thought that passengers could drink for some reason. You can have an open container walking in most of Louisiana, if not all of Louisiana.
Well, in downtown New Orleans, you can for sure.
In New Orleans. So anyway, yeah, that was super interesting. And everybody should do it.
I mean, if you get a chance and you like daiquiris,
even if you don't, do it. It's like there's alcohol in it. You could probably get them virgin without the alcohol. It's a slushy.
It is a slushy. And
it's hot there. Yeah, so a cold slushy goes down pretty nicely.
It does. It's pretty funny. And what flavors did we get this time?
Oh, we had like a
peach. The peach was really good.
Peach, pineapple.
And you had pineapple. That's right.
Amaretto. Yeah, it was good. It was tasty. Lots of good food. Lots of, like you said, good people. The music at the festival was incredible. And just watching everybody out there dancing and partying after 2 years of COVID I think
it was really heartwarming. Yeah.
I think everybody needs that.
Yeah. And so here's what we learned from someone from Lafayette. One of our friends, a fellow travel blogger, he says when he tells people that he's from Louisiana, that, all they want to do is ask questions about New Orleans. And we love New Orleans, and he loves New Orleans. New Orleans is a blast. There's lots to do there. But don't go to New Orleans for the Cajun experience. Go to New Orleans on a weeknight. Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then go down to Lafayette on the weekend because Lafayette is small, so it's closed on weeknights.
Mm-hmm.
There are some places you can go for live music, but for the most part, it's it's more shut down. Whereas New Orleans is open 24/7.
You can do a swamp tour from New Orleans, but
you're not going to get out into the real swamps. You're not going to
get as far out because you have to get out of the city first.
So go down for the weekend to Lafayette and then experience the food there, the live music there, and I think you'll get a real taste of Cajun Louisiana.
Yeah, and you'll enjoy it like we did. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.